Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today I thought I'd do a little nostalgia and go back and talk about my first 5 war games that I purchased. Not that I played, but that I actually spent some of my allowance money or whatever to buy. Now the first one here obviously is Tactics II. Now the copies of the games I'm going to show you today are not my original games that I bought when I was a kid. I ended up losing all of those for various reasons. And I've gone back and rebought copies of those games. First one that I bought when I was a kid was Tactics II. And I don't even remember what got me to buy it. I will say that I had an interest in military history. I used to go to the library in school and look at the World War I books that they had in the library. And that was the first time I'd ever seen a dead body. A photograph of one was from the history books on World War I. And I had started playing with miniatures. I had some Airfax HO scale, or whatever scale the little plastics are. I'd got some Napoleonics, and I had some American Civil War, and I was interested in all of that stuff, right, as a kid. So I believe this was at a toy store at the mall, and I saw this and I was like, oh, cool. It's got a tank on the cover, and it's a game about war and combat. So I ended up buying it. Now that led me down this rabbit hole of a hobby that stayed with me my whole life so far, right? Like many of you. So when I decided to go back and pick up at least the first 5, because I have a very strong memory of the first 5. After that, it gets a little blurry. I wanted to go ahead and repurchase these just for my own collection. Some of them I've actually played, and at some point I'll probably play some Tactics II as well. So I bought this copy, and lo and behold, it's got a beautiful unpunched counter set. Really good condition. I could not bring myself to take an old game like this and punch these counters. I think to some degree, I have a stewardship over some of these older games to maybe save them in as best condition as I can for future generations, whether it be my grandchildren or, if I sell these to somebody, who knows where they're going to end up. But I couldn't bring myself to punch this game. As old as it is, I just couldn't do it. So I ended up picking up a second copy. Now, I've already taken the contents out. We'll take a quick look at them. But, old school stuff, there's nothing on the back of this, right? Everything's pretty much on the cover. And this is iconic. I mean, very strong graphics, right? Black, white, red. The old Avalon Hill black, white, red logo. Very nicely done. So here we go. Old school map. And at the time, this blew me away. The concept of different unit types and terrain types and just moving things at an abstract level with the counters, right? There's a weather chart here. Roll a 6-sided dice. Time record card, which it's probably pointless to even use this in the game. It's not a time limit game. And it's just about replacements, remembering, I guess, when to bring them on. And it just denotes a season change, so you know when you're in the different seasons, which are on this side here, but they also tell you that. So I thought this was kind of cool. You roll a dice, see, what the weather is like for each month that you're playing. And then the classic combat's result table. Now, this whole thing here is for people who just don't want to do math, quite honestly. But if you ever, struggling to do math, just run your numbers. It's going to tell you 2 to 1, 1 to 1, whatever. Simple to combat results up here, single-sided. You also ended up with, these are always a little time sync. These are always beautiful because it's kind of a little snapshot in time. Now with the internet, these things obviously wouldn't be used at all, but interesting. And I love what you get here. I'll get new product info before the general public does. 2, I'll qualify for the exclusive answering service at no charge. Like, how would they charge you if you called their number and asked a question? I don't know, but if you send this card in, they'll pick up the phone, for free. And then get you on their mailing list, which is still an important marketing tool for today. But anyway, these things are always nice to see in various older games. Then the rule set. Pretty straightforward stuff, right? I mean, how many total pages is this? 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. If you go 8.5 by 11. Double-sided. Very easily to read, laid out. It's nothing overly complicated. This is basic stuff, even with the advanced rules. If you're new to wargaming, you can pick up this game for under $50. Probably even closer, depending on when and where. I've seen it $35, I think, on Noble Knight currently. I got mine for both of these copies individually for less than that. But this is a great beginner type of game. So I started off, and it's non-historic. This is the first game that I had. I played it a lot, which will lead into my second game that I got, also a non-historic one. Let's take a look at that one now. The second game in my wargaming journey was Blitzkrieg. I don't remember what made me pick this up. Maybe it was the box art cover. I get guys running around out here in combat with no hats or helmets or anything. But this was my second game. Again, got nothing on the back. I just recently got this this copy. I haven't had a chance to go through and check and make sure I have all the counters. But it's punched. And let's take a quick look at the content. Very similar to Tactics 2. And one of the things I didn't bring up in Tactics 2 was the conditions for victory was to eliminate all of your enemy, or for one turn, control all their cities. And what you're going to see with Blitzkrieg, it's basically the same game, same victory conditions. You've got blue and red still at war, but the game has evolved. We no longer have squares, we have hexes. You got color now, much more color on the map, a bigger board, more units. And you start off with instructions. Read this first. This is basically a 4-page rule set for the basic game. When I say 4 pages, I mean that's really nothing. You got 1, 2, and then a couple of notes here. So let's call it 3 pages of rules. Pretty basic stuff. Then you get a battle manual, which is a little more involved. Okay, and it deals with a lot, tournament play and more advanced rules. Air transport, ranger supply, invasions, minor countries. What would that be? Yellow and green? I don't know. But they don't really get into who those minor countries are. That could be a whole game unto itself. Now you got some air power. And then also your optional rules. Very similar with a weather chart. And it does bring up, and I think I didn't dive into the advanced rules on Tactics 2, but I think it also brings up nuclear capabilities. Again, some resolution on the rules, a little commentary on strategy, and an appendix. Your player aid. Now it's got a little thing that deals with your terrain effects on combat. Your attrition table. Now I glanced over this. It's slightly different. They made some changes to the outcome, which is, probably, kind of a second edition Tactics 2. And then a tournament attrition table. I'm not going to get into all what that does, but you can see the game is kind of matured, right? You got a time record sheet here again. We've got some things to keep track of, replacements and whatnot. And the same thing on the second side. Game 1 all the way to game 10. Interesting. And then your turns down the side. So you keep track of, looks like 20 games. Something that they added that Tactics 2 doesn't have is kind of Tactics 2 just had areas that they called encampments or deployment areas or something like that. And now you've got actual units. They have names, first corps, third corps, second corps, and turns that they come in. A little more organized, right? For both blue and red. Very nice. And then the counters. And again, much more counters than what you had in Tactics 2. So for me, I had Tactics 2. I got this and I was just blown away again by the maps, right? And as a kid, I don't know, I love drawing maps. I used to draw maps all the time, make up stuff. I still do when I'm doodling. And it's a bigger map. So this just kind of expanded my journey through wargaming. And although it's still fictional, right? Red versus blue, much more interesting map. And I spent a lot of time looking at this and playing this. A lot of times by myself. I had a brother and a father. Neither of them were interested in war games. Although I do have a story where I was playing Tactics 2 with my dad. I was kicking his butt, and then he flipped the board on me and said there was an earthquake. He just didn't have time to deal with this game. He tried. I'll give him credit for trying, but just wasn't his thing. And that's how he ended the game. Earthquake, flipped the board. Obviously, that had an effect on me because I remember it to this day. So I haven't had a chance to do an inventory, and I will go through and clip the counters on these. But this was the second game. So now I've had two games that have gone from kind of, 1958 when Tactics 2 was created. Some very simple rules, nothing historic per se. And it was more about just me coming up in my head with tactics and how I'm going to move things around and just letting my imagination go wild. And both Tactics 2 and Blitzkrieg did that for me. And then things start to change with my next game, which was my first historical war game. Let's take a look at that now. Here we go. This was my true introduction to historical wargaming. The classic Battle of the Bulge from Avalon Hill. And as we look at some of the components, you're going to see the history from Tactics 2, how that kind of evolved into Blitzkrieg. And again, there's so much more than what I'm explaining here, guys. I'm just giving you my point of view as a kid getting these games and how I saw the evolution of this from the games that I had purchased. Now, obviously, there's a lot more games out there, things that I didn't see, that I didn't understand, right? But when we look at it, this was just, again, blew me away because now I'm looking at history books and I'm tying it back to a game. And again, at the time, it wasn't like I can go on the internet. I had to go down to the library to get a book on the Battle of the Bulge to read about it, and then come back and see those units and locations on the map. And these games really started at this point to put history into context for me. Or I could see a map, I could see the units, I could see how things were moving. Much more so than I ever got from any movie, quite honestly. So, again, pretty simple stuff. Now I've taken everything out. I did leave this in, the trays. Didn't have them in the other two. Maybe that the copies just didn't have those. They probably go back much further. You see I've kind of got some of the counters separated into when they come in on the order of battle. We talked about kind of a snapshot in time. Family classics. Yeah, there's Tactics 2. Oh, I never got that version of Gettysburg. There we go. Some of these I own today. Some of them I will be picking up. It's interesting. But I can remember getting the Tactics 2 catalog. At least I have a memory of that. And I would go through and look at the various games and, I want to save up and buy this one or save up and buy that one. But look at that. And look at the prices on some of these. Let's go back and take a quick look here. That's Tactics 2. $5. You can get that game $5. Yeah, $5. Stalingrad, $7. D-Day, $7. This Battle of the Bulge game, $7. Gettysburg, $7. Africa Corps, $7. Richthofen's War, $9. Blitzkrieg, $8. France 1940, $9. Wow. Midway, $7. Very interesting. Talked about play by mail. Having trouble finding opponents? That's still true today. Well, players wanted in the general magazine. Shipping and handling charges, $1. Airmail was $2.50. That's crazy money. Back issues, 30 cents an issue for shipping. Again, these are little snapshots of time. Okay, I'm starting to ramble. Let me focus. So, here we go. If you think, remember what I showed you with Blitzkrieg, right? You kind of had to read instructions first, basic rules, 4 pages. Same thing with this game here. Then your battle manual, which gets into tournament games and much more complicated rules than the basic rules. Optional rules, some diagrams, again, pretty consistent formula, some historical commentary, and then appendix, some basic strategies. Little Q&A, nice. 8 pages. This I looked at, this is exactly the same as the one in Tactics 2. Now, I don't know when that version of Tactics 2 was printed, so these could have been contemporaries. But, same thing. Here's our CRT. Very similar to the one that was in Blitzkrieg. We got your terrain effects down here, and you got your CRT up here. On the back side is the tournament information, much like what was on Blitzkrieg. A little time marker with your game turns. Keep track of things, and it tells you when new units are coming on the board. So this is now getting a little more utility than what it had in Tactics 2, but still similar game components, right? I don't see a weather chart here. Well, obviously, weather was a factor. Now, let me just take a quick look, see if weather even shows up in here. Tournament game, weather. Yeah, page 7. Just take a quick look, see what it shows. The other ones were a bit random. Okay, here is a dice roll for certain dates and a roll on getting clear weather. So this is a little more historical as opposed to a random table. Makes sense. And then what you have here are your units where they're placed. And again, because this was historical, I just totally love this. And now I was looking at, these are real people. These are real units. This is real history that I'm now reenacting. It's not just red versus blue, although it is red and blue here on the cards. This was the U.S. against Germany in the Battle of the Bulge. My true introduction to historical wargaming. And this had a profound effect on me. And going forward, I don't have as many of these abstract games. This really sucked me in on so many levels. Again, I had to go to the library to get books on this stuff to read, to kind of tie it in. None of this stuff was online. There wasn't a lot of printed material. And I think it got Tactics 2 back in the mid to early 70s when I was like 12, 13 years old, something like that. Single-sided. And now you look at the map and the graphics, still similar. Mountains are basically the same. The woods are basically the same. The cities still have the hatches. Goes right back to Tactics 2 as far as the graphics, right? Color, although it does kind of have a tan kind of overlay or, background. But these are real cities now. And the scale is much different, obviously. But this just blew me away. And to me, this is a beautiful, beautiful map. Now, compare it to some of the stuff graphically today, some of the really good artists are putting out. This doesn't hold a candle to it in that sense, but the nostalgia of this and how much time I spent playing over this as a kid is going to never be replaced, quite honestly. And I'm sure many of you watching this have probably had similar experiences. Would love to hear what you think on these particular games, and maybe, you know, games that you've played that have had the same effect on you. Share that with us. I'd love to see what you have to say. Just leave that stuff in the comments. But now let's get on to the next two games, which really took things to a whole nother level for me. Now my fourth game, Tobruk. Like the others in their own way, totally blew my mind. We went from squares on maps and abstract armies from red-blue to better maps, a little more detailed rules, still against red-blue, to our first historical with Battle of the Bulge. It was a larger scale battle, but still followed some very simple rule sets, could be played on a basic level. And then I opened this box, and oh my goodness. There's the back. It's got individual tanks. It's in the desert. 3 different nations. I was very intrigued. One of the first dioramas I had ever built as a kid was actually the 88. I had put it on a floor tile, and I had put down all of my putty to kind of make a desert floor. And it was a cheap tile, and the putty, when it dried, it warped my whole diorama. But I've always had an interest in the desert war. And this game, on so many levels, just opened my mind and just took me deeper down this rabbit hole in this hobby. Start off with the rules, all right? First thing I noticed, you open it up, and there's individual trucks and mortars, aircraft, and mines, and weapon pits, and tanks, and infantry. The game also had scenarios, which was kind of new for me. Scenario 1, and it says right here, you read 2 pages, stop, play scenario 1. So there was a modular approach to teaching the game. Scenario 2 teaches even more of the game. And so you step through this. And again, the classic map on this is just desert, right? No terrain markers to speak of. And I felt like you take something, say, from Battle of the Bulge, one of those hexes. This board to me represented what goes on inside one of those hexes on the Battle of the Bulge game. And so I was like, I'm drilling down into tactical. And this was probably the first tactical game I owned. I think it was probably the first tactical game I ever played. Now, when I was in high school, I was in a war game club. You know, you have your clubs in high school. And the teacher that ran the club had a subscription to SPI magazine. And so I had played a number of games, and we could check them out. And so I have a number of SPI games that I hadn't purchased. So again, this video is on the first 5 games I had purchased, but I had been playing some of those games as well. And I have a few of them that I have subsequently bought because they have a place in my heart as well. And you've seen some of them on the channel. Sixth Fleet, or I think that's what it's called. I forget now. And then I just picked up a game this past week that I completely forgot about. And I'll flash it at the end of the video as kind of a teaser. It wasn't one of the first 5 that I owned. I just now bought a copy of it, but I did play it in high school, and it was thematic at the time. But we'll get into that in a minute. Let's back here again. I'm rambling with my memory, so I apologize. But I love this stuff, and I'm so glad that I picked these games up again. But this again, scenarios, right? And it kind of teaches you the various aspects of the game. And then here you go again. Your scenarios, some experimental rules. Freeform scenarios. I like designing games as a kid. I did that a lot of sports games. I used to take my baseball cards and make up games, hockey and basketball. I did a lot of sports games, making them up as a kid. And then firefights, which are short scenarios, basically. And I still play some of these today. I think I have a video of the Queen of the Desert, and I love me the Matilda. One of my favorite tanks of all time. Anyway, this, again, opened a whole new world for me. And then the designer notes. This was like seeing the guy behind the curtain. And you know I love designer notes, and it all starts with this game and this set of notes. And I remember reading through this, because you didn't get this anywhere else. There wasn't forums. There wasn't a lot of, at least for me as a kid, access to this type of information. So I was a sponge. And the designer notes get into weapon effectiveness, specific systems, gunfire, anti-personnel weapons. It really did a deep dive onto weapon effectiveness. A lot of this stuff I didn't understand, but I found it very intriguing. I mean, there's like math that was actually used in designing this game, which I just find amazing. Then a listing of all the various units. Now, this isn't all-encompassing. This doesn't cover the whole desert. This doesn't cover all the armies, right? And every single piece of equipment. But what it does cover, it does an amazing job of. Some of the tactics, a little map. Again, more information about the battle. This game just, again, took me to a whole nother level of appreciation and just fueled me wanting to design war games. This was the tipping point for me. Now the stats aren't on here, right? It just gives you a number and a movement and a little outline of the tank. So when you're playing, it's like a little miniature game, which again, I had been collecting and painting miniatures. So I saw this as kind of a smash up of miniature gaming with my board hex encounter wargaming. And so now you've got the different types of units, their hexes in range. And then let me move this out of the way. Oh, look at all of this loveliness. Oh, I got it open. I don't want to spill everything. I mean, there's smoke counters. There's trenches. Again, totally blown away as a kid. Oh yeah, when a tank gets destroyed, you just flip it over and you've got debris left on the battlefield. That just fueled my imagination. Then all of your different weapons that British have, their hexes in range, types of ammo, and whether they hit or not. And then when you take your individual target vehicle, it says what type of weapon hit it, and you roll. So detailed of a combat system that I had not seen before. I was used to doing, our combat resolution tables, right? 2-to-1 odds. This was actual, what type of weapon hit where on the vehicle and what type of damage did it do on a micro level. And it covers everything that the game encompasses. I still think this game is a must-have for anybody that plays war games, especially if you're into tactical. It's just, again, totally blown away. Then you have this chart here where you've got individual troop casualties. So it goes down to the man level. Again, this was just so, boom, my brain just exploded. And I love this stuff. Now I've got one that I put under plastic so I can reuse it. And obviously I do break this out and play it on occasion. I still need to clip all my counters. Shame on me. I've got the ones that I've used clipped. And then, simple, right? But to me, this was the desert. I could see the undulations. I could see all the scrub. I could see guys hiding in depressions in the ground. From all the images I had seen in the books on what the desert war looked like. This all came alive in my theater of the mind when I would play the game. And I'd have a tank sitting there burning and maybe a mortar crew over here. I could see this happening as I played the game as a kid. I totally loved it. And this took me to a whole nother level in appreciation of war games and dealing with historical conflicts. And let's get into my fifth game next. And it opens up a whole nother level of enjoyment. Okay, guys, bonus game. As I'm rambling along this memory lane, this was not one of my first 5 games. Probably not even one of my first 7 or 8 games. This came out in the early 80s. And by then I was well entrenched into wargaming. But this was a game that, for me, keep in mind, I grew up, and I told you, I played a lot of games, made games, played by myself. Most of the wargaming I did. I didn't have a buddy that I played with. We moved around a lot, being a Navy brat. I played a lot of solo games. And oh my God, this game was made for me. A military hex encounter solo tactical game. I was in heaven. I ended up buying a couple of the, was it Purple Heart and a few others. I don't remember them all now. I'm not going to look them up. This game just really, again, opened my eyes to game design. And in a lot of ways, formed my way my brain thought, right? I design software for a living. I've designed systems. And seeing these games develop over time and all the subsystems and the logic taught me to, think about things in different ways. And I think that these games, not only did they teach history, they also taught me critical thinking in a design sense. And I'm forever grateful for that. But this game was just on another level again. And this is, I believe, John Butterfield, who I never met, although I think we've been at the same con. I just didn't recognize him. So at some point in time, I will get to meet him. And I've got a number of his games. And oh my God, he is just a master. And there are a lot of designers in this that are just amazing. So I'm not pointing him out above everybody else. But oh my God, this game had such an effect on my life as a kid. A young man at this point. I was a little bit older. Again, this was in the 80s. So I was in my early 20s. You got your set of rules. And again, it's tactical level. It's historic in its flavor, not any specific engagements. And it's got a role-playing aspect, which was totally new for me in a hex encounter war game. And that's not the only thing. This game had a lot of things that were new to me that really, like I said, sorry to repeat myself, stream of consciousness here, did a lot to help me think about game design. In fact, I have a love of choose your own adventure style games. I'm working on designing some more games and historical games around that very thing, incorporating rules with the choose your own adventures type of thing. And we'll get into that another day. But this was definitely an inspiration and still is an inspiration for that type of game design. So you got your scenarios, and then, you get the Choose Your Own Adventure kind of paragraph booklet, which gets into certain things that happen, works in conjunction with these bad boys. I mean, come on. A cartridge view sleeve that gives you paragraphs that kind of direct your choose your own path as you're moving units on a hex encounter map. I don't know why there aren't more games like this. Maybe because they're a pain to design, but I would love to see somebody take this on in a modern day version with everything that is kind of in vogue in game design now, and incorporate ambush style design into it. And again, you get all of these different scenarios and plugins. So I'm sure it's not easy to design. I appreciate the effort that's gone into these. If you want to see, by the way, if you want to see any of the games that I have on the channel that I haven't already highlighted, let me know. I'm going to be playing some of these just for my own enjoyment, and I don't mind sharing that experience with you guys. It's not so much about an unboxing with this. I just want you to kind of see some of the components and talk about, again, my stream of consciousness, my memories, and how these types of games have affected me. But this one, again, had role-playing, had solo. Nice maps. Anyway, this was just a quick little bonus. It's not in my top 5, but I felt I really needed to just kind of talk about Ambush. Okay, back to the video. This game just, again, took me to a whole nother level with Tobruk, which is one of my all-time favorite games. And I showed you had your units and you're marking off individual casualties. Well, this takes that and dives into an even deeper level. And anybody that's played Advanced Squad Leader or Squad Leader knows what this has become. Now, I had Iron Cross and I've Crescendo of Doom, I think. I had both of those. I don't have copies of them now. At some point, I will get them just for my own personal collection. And I may start playing this. I do have some Advanced Squad Leader stuff. It's a love-hate relationship. I try to get into it and play it, and I get bogged down. And some of the gamesmanship that you see with players that are playing competitive is a major turnoff for me, so I won't even attempt to go play in a tournament. And for people who do, hey, you love it, do it. I'm no knocking on you. This is just me and what I like and I don't like. And you can probably do this with indie games. So that's why I don't play these competitive. When I play war games, it's social. If I play a game and somebody is really hardcore about the rules and about this and wants to get into arguments, I'm more apt to just quit and walk away. I don't need that when I play. And this video isn't about that. Again, you're going to get a unfiltered ramble of some of these things as they bring back thoughts and memories. Full disclosure, I'm not 100% sure this was my 5th game. Pretty sure Tobruk was my 4th, and then I bought games. I had a little more income later after I got into high school as a senior and graduating and going to junior college. This would have been late 70s, early 80s, because I'm old like that. And I played a lot of different games. Ogre, GEV, those types of things from Steve Jackson. I was playing a lot of role-playing games and still doing my war games. I had talked about SPI. I picked this up. This was a game that I had played that I didn't own, and I didn't own it until recently. But my father was in the Navy, and this was right at that time that I was young and impressionable. I was 14 years old, freshman in high school. I graduated when I was 17, do the math. Minus 4, 13-ish. And this was one of the first games that I was introduced to in the Wargaming Club. Anyway, we'll finish with my thoughts on that. Sorry, I'm rambling. Anyway, Squad Leader. Again, it might not have been my actual 5th game. There was War at Sea and Submarine, which I have copies of Submarine. I have them sitting off camera. And I believe it was War at Sea that I might have gotten before Squad Leader, but I'm calling this my 5th, at least for this video. And just everything about it, the maps, the full color, the detail, the line of sight. I was sucked into this game and just had to own it all, as it were. I don't now. And if you guys are at all into, say, Squad Leader, Advanced Squad Leader, go check out Zilla Blitz's channel. He had scored a dream set of Advanced Squad Leader stuff. I'm not sure how much he paid for it, but I think he got a decent deal on it, and he's got a ton of stuff that'll last a lifetime. And yeah, I'm jealous. I'm not going to lie, I'm jealous. Anyway, this is 2nd edition. And first thing you notice, at least I did, was 3 columns, small. This was some serious stuff. And I just, again, would play this solo. I'm sure I played it wrong, but these images are ingrained in my memory, right? And it was so mind-blowing that you could take a game that would be this detailed and complex. And nowadays we look at this stuff and we can pick out flaws and, oh, this didn't work or that didn't work or whatever the case may be. But again, as a young kid, this stuff just blew me away. And I'm very logical, right? I write software for a living. I always did really good in trigonometry, just because it's all logic-based, right? And so game systems have always intrigued me ever since I was little. Design your own. Oh my God. This, as a young kid designing his own games, this was just such a playground for me, a sandbox as they call it these days. Point values. Oh, I kind of want to do that now. Just looking at this now gives me thoughts, ideas. And again, designer notes. I love me the designer notes. Some basic tactics. I probably should read through this. I probably learned something. And look at all the different types of terrain. Again, it just took what I had done, had learned, been exposed to in Tobruk. Now, I think on the armor side of things, Tobruk head and shoulders over anything ASL's ever done. It's a different game. What Tobruk has done is still, to me, groundbreaking in that sense. In a lot of ways, Squad Leader was unto itself in its style of play. What else do we have here? Ooh, the guards counterattack. I don't know how many times I played that. So you got your different, now you got 2 dice. A lot of the other games had single dice rolls, right? I'd have to go back and look at Tobruk, I don't remember now. But again, this was just such a joy for me to play as a kid, and my imagination just ran wild. The individual units, and some of them actually had names, right? Individuals had names. You got all these scenarios. Again, turns, a little bit of history. And I learned so much by just playing some of these scenarios. Streets of Stalingrad. Just looking at this right now makes me want to roll some dice, put some counters on the table. If you play this, you know what the counters look like, right? Your units, your leaders, your weapons. Same thing with your armor. Again, smoke. This, I can't say enough of just how this had an impact on me. And I can remember many days fighting through these streets here, as many of you probably have. And I've got, you know, all this happens to be clipped. But this game had a huge, like all the others, in its own way, had a huge impact on me. A little bonus here, extra stuff. Submarine was a game I had gotten early on. Again, very tactical. Who doesn't like submarines, right? I won't open this up now. I'm trying to not have this be too long, and I've talked about Sixth Fleet. But there was a game I had completely forgotten about that I picked up this past week that was one of these SPI games that I had played through the Wargaming Club. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I got this like 2 days ago. Foxbat and Phantom. And again, this was, I was exposed to this in the 70s, and that's why the F-4 Phantom to me is one of the most iconic American jet fighters, and would probably be my favorite one. It's not that it's the best, it's just I can remember being at the Naval Air Station and watching these take off and land. And so I grew up around them, and they've had just, you know, that impact on me. And this game I can remember playing, again, when I was in high school. This was published in the 73, and I graduated in 79. So this came out, it was probably a new game when I got it in the Wargaming Club, and it goes up to 77. So this was very contemporary, along with Sixth Fleet. So these two games here, again, I didn't own at the time, but I had played in high school, and was my introduction to Strategy and Tactics magazine and SPI. So guys, thanks for joining me on this trip down memory lane. I love the fact that some of these games are available, most of them at decent prices, so I can rebuild the collection that I'd lost as a stupid kid. If you've got any of these games, if you've got other games that have had these types of impacts on you, I'd love to hear about them. Share them in the comments. It's always good to hear these types of stories. They're uplifting for me. And hopefully this video is maybe taking you back to your childhood and let you relive some of the joy you had in playing war games. If you like this video, put a thumbs up on it. Like I said, leave some comments. I want to know what you've played. Maybe some suggestions on older games that I haven't picked up that I can go pick up and maybe get some of that old nostalgia myself, even at this ripe old age of 60 plus. I won't get into details. And if you like the video and you like this type of content, please subscribe to the channel. With that being said, until the next time, goodbye for now.